back to the beginning, started by your father, Forrest Green, and he came to Detroit. And he already had that heritage of the barber college from the South.
Um, that's correct, Trudy. My dad is from East Point, Georgia, which is just outside of Atlanta, a suburb of Atlanta. And his father had a barbershop there in East Point as he was growing up. And so he learned the trade there in the barbershop. My dad went to Morehouse College there in Atlanta, and cut a lot of hair when he was in Atlanta at Morehouse, cut a lot of the students' hair. He often talked about the business he had going as a student, and so there were very early roots, and then it was part of the Great Migration and came here in the mid-1930s to Detroit after graduating Morehouse.
So great opportunities in Detroit, I know, but still a lot of limitations back then. What were the challenges that he faced when he came here?
Well, first of all, his degree from Morehouse was in social work. So he worked for several different social work organizations in Detroit, found that it just wasn't quite what was exciting for him. He still loved barbering, and he was an entrepreneur. And so he looked around, though, and he saw that the opportunities for Black men and women to become barbers was limited in Detroit. To become even then a licensed barber, you had to go to barber school, you had to graduate from a barber school, and then you had to pass a state examination. When he started Michigan Barber School, the Black students, people who wanted to become barbers, Black persons, they could go to what was called the theory part of barber school, learning about the history of barbering, sanitation, that type of thing. But then you couldn't cut white people's hair in the barber school. So then you were apprenticed out to barbershops in order to get that segment of the education. He thought that was wrong, and actually had to go through a process with the state to get the barber school approved, so that it could do both, that we could teach theory and have the practical portion, people coming in for barber services. So it wasn't an easy start, but he was determined, and clearly it has worked out.
So that's excellent. Talk about the first location and paint the picture of what Detroit was like back then and what that neighborhood was like.
Well, as many Detroiters know, either based on perhaps having been around or certainly the history of Detroit, that Detroit, of course, was highly segregated, both residentially and from a business perspective. And there were only certain places in Detroit that Black people could live, and there were only certain places that Black people could open businesses. One of those areas was Black Bottom, where there was a large concentration of Black businesses, from barbershops to cleaners to entertainment spots to whatever the services and needs of the Black community were. They were, for the most part, located there in Black Bottom. So he of course ended up with his first location on Hastings Street, which was the renowned main street of Black Bottom, and the Michigan Barber School had its beginnings there.
Absolutely. And not only is Hastings Street, like you said, so renowned before it was destroyed, that whole neighborhood, but then barbershops in the Black community have always historically been a place where people kind of gather. So what was it like back then?
Well, so in all honesty, since they actually started
a little bit before your time.
Before me, but I did visit the school as a child, but don't have a lot of recollections of it. I think there's some pictures that might be available for everybody to see. it'll give, I think, a real flavor of what it was like. It was small in relationship to what we have now. Now we've got, about 50 chairs that we can accommodate people. Back then, I think there was less than 20. But the first, interestingly enough, the first class had one woman, and so that we were educating Black women in barbering, even going back that far.
Excellent.
It's the next move over to Adams. The second location was on Adams Street that I was more familiar with.
Okay, so Adams Street downtown?
Yes, where Comerica Park is essentially is where the Michigan Barber School was until 1963 when it moved on to Grand River.
Okay, and became an institution out there in Grand River and still there.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So do you have particular success stories that either you remember or that your dad told you about people who came through those doors and, I don't know, maybe started a barber shop of their own, or maybe went on to other great things?
Well, the number of people that we have impacted over 75 years, first of all, just the sheer number. We're talking about thousands of people who have gone to Michigan Barber School, become licensed, and are operating in Detroit and around Michigan, and really around the country. We hear from our former students who have moved on to places to Florida, New York, other states where they are doing very well, and they are extremely appreciative of what Michigan Barber School taught them. They often say that the best barbers come from Michigan, and the best Michigan barbers come from Michigan Barber School. So we have spread our talents nationwide. But it was a place where a lot of entertainers came, where, I mean, back in the 50s and 60s, the difference in hairstyles was significant. I mean, on a Friday or Saturday night at the Michigan Barber School, half of the chairs would be filled with people men getting their hair straightened, and, as it was called back then, conked, with the finger waves and so forth. And so I got a chance to watch all of that unfold, because my dad really started taking me to, I started accompanying my dad to barber school when I was around 12, 13 years old. I would go down on Saturdays and just help out, whether it was sweeping up there or ringing the cash register or doing whatever is necessary. So I've seen this transition over a long, long period of time, and it's been amazing.
So now you're celebrating the 75th anniversary of Michigan Barber School. So tell us about the event coming up in November.
Well, again, when we thought about just how amazing it is to be in existence for 75 years, I often tell our students, particularly if we're bringing in a new class, I ask them, how long does the average small business last in the United States? And they guess all sorts of different numbers. And I tell them that on the SBA, Small Business Administration website, they say the average length of time is 8.5 years. And so when you're approaching almost 8 decades, you ought to do something significant. And so we're having an event at the International Banquet Center in downtown Detroit on Monroe, where we will commemorate both the founding and all of the important contributions of the Michigan Barber School. Also, we're going to take good time to recognize a number of our recent graduates. We had been doing graduations, but COVID kind of squelched that, and so we're going to also take the time to recognize recent graduates.
Exciting. We look forward to that. And of course, you didn't become a barber, but you've had an incredible legal career in the community and a public servant, and from U.S. attorney to deputy mayor, representing Aretha Franklin at times. So you have done it all, and we appreciate your support in this community. And I'm sure that was because of your dad's encouragement and laying that foundation.
There's no question about it. My dad and my mom, because I have to say my mom worked there at the
Absolutely.
barber school in an administrative capacity for a long period of time. But I also have to correct you to say I am a barber.
Oh,
You don't,
okay.
there's no green who doesn't go to school to become a barber. And so I cut hair all through undergrad and law school. And I must admit, I tell people often that I think maybe the qualities of being in the barbershop and those kind of interactions that you have may be as important to having become a pretty good lawyer and some of the things I've accomplished as anything else that I've experienced. So the Michigan Barber
Awesome.
School has played a big role in my life.